Hello. I'm Dave Moskovitz, and when people ask me what I do, my first instinct is to say that I'm a professional geek. I've been programming since I was 11 years old in 1971, and I've never looked back. And I tell people that the day I stop programming, you can dig a hole for me. Sorry, Nat, I'm still stuck in it. These days, I spend most of my energy running a seed investment company come incubator called WebFund. We invest in and grow online businesses from being an idea in a crazy person's head to commercial deployment and international expansion. To date, all of the businesses that we've invested in are built on an open source stack. Forgive the Boise analogy, but we simply can't afford to have a proprietary fist squeezing the testicles of scalability. Now, that open source stack is there thanks to a very special group of people, and that's contributors. Without open source contributors, there would be no open source software. People open source their code for reasons that are philosophical, social, economic, or just even convenience. And many of us do it just because, well, just because. It's the right thing to do. Now, I'm proud to say that I've developed an open source project myself for writing dictionaries called Freelex Mata Puna. And that's being used as we speak to preserve a number of endangered languages around the world, including Te Reo Maori. When I initially wrote version 0.1 under contract for the Maori Language Commission, I believe it was the first NZ government contract to specifically require the GPL license for all development. And this was in 2002. It was a hard sell, but after months of negotiations with incredulous lawyers, we got there in the end. The lesson here is that it is possible to take a stand and win by sticking to your principles. So it gives me great pleasure to stand here tonight and hand out the New Zealand Open Source Award 2010 for the Best Open Source Contributor. In addition to the finalists, there was a really, really strong field, including, among others, Richard Voles for his contribution to EasyB, Benjamin Humphreys for his contribution to the Ubuntu Manual Project, Chris Lee for his contribution to TurboCache, Jonathan Marshall for his contribution to the XBMC Media Center, and James Newton for his contribution to JSON.net. Yes, .net, open source. Isn't it a wonderful world? But they're not the only contributors around here. I mean, not everyone is as famous as Greg Crow-Hartman or Tridge. And I suspect in this audience, here tonight, we have more than a few contributors. So if you've ever contributed even a single line of code to an open source project, I'd like you to raise your hand. For all projects start with that first line of code, and it is you contributors that we particularly salute tonight, and I'd like everyone else to stand up and give these guys a hand. You know, Sir Isaac Newton is famous for saying, if we can see a bit further, it's because we stand on the shoulders of giants, and it is you contributors whose shoulders we are standing on. So without your contributions, we would have no Linux, no Apache, no Koha, no Rails, and of course, no Tux Racer. So this award recognizes the outstanding contributions by a New Zealand individual or organization to one or more free and open source projects. So the finalists are Andrew Caldwell for Gorse. In September 2009, following his previous work of visualizing website access logs with Logstalgia, Andrew released Gorse, a new tool for visualizing the history and development of software projects. Typically, as software is developed, incremental changes to files are grouped together as commits and stored in a version control system, which maintains a history of which files were changed by whom and when. Gorse takes this history and plays it back as an interactive animation. And I urge you to look up the YouTube videos of this because it is really stunning. The root directory of the project shows up at the center of an animated tree, and directories appear as branches with files as leaves. Developers can be seen working on the tree at the times they contributed to the project. And while this slide is not animated and doesn't do it justice, you can get an idea of what it might look like in action. Gorse itself is an interactive tool that includes the ability to capture video to create movies. It has proved very popular with hundreds of video projects being uploaded to YouTube, Vimeo, and other video sites since its release. So please give a hand to Andrew. Our next finalist is Ian Robb for Pigeon. Now, Ian has contributed greatly to the open source project Pigeon. How many people here use Pigeon? Come on, must be tons. Pigeon is a cross-platform instant messenger client that talks to a range of instant messenger services, such as Facebook, Skype, OkCupid, Omegle, Twitter, etc. It also allows the new voice and video extensions to compile under Windows. Ian spends much of his spare time contributing to LibPurple Pigeon, either by coding plugins or patches, or by providing helpful support by email and in the #Pigeon IRC chat room. The creation of Facebook and Skype plugins for Pigeon has enabled a large user base of blind computer users to utilize screen readers to talk to their friends on IM protocols. So let's give Ian a big hand. Now our next finalist, once again, Tabitha Roder. She keeps coming up for One Laptop Per Child. And she hasn't only contributed greatly to the success of the One Laptop Per Child project, but she also contributes to Moodle, an open source educational tool for e-learning, which we saw IRD using so well. And she is a successful advocate of open source in the New Zealand education sector. She has introduced universities and schools to various open source tools, including WordPress, Moodle, MediaWiki, and much more. Another of Tabitha's recent achievements was organizing the Education Mini-Conference at this year's linux.conf.au conference. So let's give Tabitha another big hand. And our fourth contestant is Resolve Digital for Refinery CMS. Now, 5 years ago, David Jones from Resolve Digital, based in Christchurch, built several small business sites in Ruby on Rails. This process led him to create mTools, a closed-source content management system that he used for his consulting. After 4 years of using mTools for real-world consulting, Resolve Digital decided to rename the project Refinery CMS and make it open source in 2009. In doing this, Resolve Digital took a commercial closed-source project with a 4-year investment and made it free and open source to the Ruby on Rails community, just because. Now, since open sourcing the project, it has become the second most popular Rails CMS, making Resolve Digital a strong contender in the open source contributor category. Philip Arndt from Resolve Digital now contributes to the project on a near daily basis, and his committed hours toward furthering this open source project have enabled other design organizations to benefit from its ease of use and extendability. So let's give Resolve Digital a huge hand. And the winner is Tabitha Roder.
Those of you who know me know I don't go anywhere without one of these. I was pretty surprised to get an email to tell me that I'd made the list, and then to see my name up here 3 times was quite a shock. But there are so many people who have been part of the OLPC journey around the world, and it's fabulous that they get recognition even in New Zealand. OLPC in New Zealand started middle of 2008 with the work of Martin Langhoff, Alistair Munro and myself. We expanded out in Wellington. There's a whole lot of people here who've been part of the OLPC community and have contributed from Grant and Tim and Greer, and then in Auckland, Fabiana. Other people here, a lot of the people in Catalyst have had a play with the laptops and have helped us out. So Brenda and Callum are regular contributors as well. They all deserve to be up here as well. They've all been very, very strong advocates for helping One Laptop Per Child make a difference to more than 2 million children. The other person I want to thank is actually, the other company I want to thank is Internet New Zealand, because they recently really helped me to help make a difference by paying for me to go to San Francisco. So a big thank you to them as well. Thank you.